The sky was burning. Explosions echoed across the rocky battlefield as human soldiers fought against alien warriors. Smoke and dust covered the ground. Blinding even the best-trained soldiers, laser blasts lit up the night like deadly stars. Eli, a young human soldier, ran through the chaos, his breath heavy, his armor scorched. He had already lost half his squad. He didn't know where his captain was, or if anyone was even alive anymore. All he knew was that he had to survive. He ducked. Behind a half-destroyed metal wall, gripping his rifle tightly, his heart pounded in his chest. But his hands stayed steady. He peeked out to spot enemies, 3 alien warriors rushing forward. Their weapons glowed red. He aimed, ready to fire. But then he saw her. She wasn't charging like the others. She was crawling, wounded, trying to pull herself to safety. Her long white hair was stained with blood, her thin arms shaking as she dragged her body across the broken ground. One of her legs was badly burned. She wasn't even holding a weapon. She looked up, her glowing violet eyes locking with his. Eli froze. She was just a girl, not much older than him. An enemy, but also not a threat right now. He aimed his rifle straight at her head. She didn't look away. There was no fear, only confusion, as if she was silently asking, "Why are you hesitating?" And then, without warning, another laser shot came from behind her. A bounty hunter, human or alien? Eli didn't know, right at the girl. In that moment, Eli moved. He didn't think, he didn't plan. He jumped out from cover and ran toward her. She gasped, eyes wide. He reached her just as the laser fired. Eli turned his back to the blast and shielded her with his body. Pain exploded through him. The first shot hit his shoulder, burning through armor and flesh. The second hit his side, knocking him down. He collapsed beside her, groaning, blood dripping. From his wounds, the alien girl stared at him, stunned. She had never seen a human do this, not for her kind. She reached out a shaking hand and touched his face. "Why?" she whispered, voice barely there. Eli looked up, struggling to speak. "You were gonna die," he said weakly. "Couldn't let that happen." She stared at him like he was something strange, something unreal. The sound of footsteps came. Closer, more bounty hunters. She had no time, ignoring the pain in her own body. She grabbed his arm and pulled. "Don't touch me," Eli groaned. But she didn't listen. She dragged him with surprising strength behind a large chunk of wreckage. Lasers flew over their heads, but none hit. She collapsed beside him, breathing hard. His blood was all over her hands. Eli's vision blurred, the pain too much to handle. But he saw her trying to stop the bleeding, ripping cloth from her clothes. To make bandages, he wanted to laugh. Why was she saving him now? She was supposed to hate humans, wasn't she? "Name?" she said suddenly, looking down at him. Eli blinked. "What?" "Your name?" she repeated, more slowly. "Mine is Renari Eli," he whispered. "Private Eli Gray." She nodded slowly, then looked away. The bounty hunters moved on. Thinking their targets were dead or gone, silence returned, broken. Only by the sound of their breathing, Renari sat beside him, watching the stars above. This wasn't what she had expected from the war, and it definitely wasn't what she expected from a human. He had taken the blasts for her, without knowing her, without asking for anything. And now he lay wounded, bleeding, maybe dying. Because of her, she looked down at him again, something strange in her chest. A feeling she couldn't name. "You're stupid," she said softly, almost kindly. "But thank you." Eli managed a weak smile. "You're welcome." And then his eyes closed. Darkness took him, but she didn't run. She stayed right there, because now she owed him her life, and she wasn't going to let him die alone. Not tonight. Not ever. The night was cold and full of shadows. Renari sat still for a long time, her back against the broken metal wall. her eyes never leaving the human soldier who had fallen unconscious beside her. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale under the dim starlight. She didn't know much about human medicine, but she knew this: if he stayed here, he would die. And somehow, the thought made her chest tighten painfully. He had jumped in front of her, took the hits, bled for her. No one from her side would have done that, not for a human. Not for anyone. Renari didn't understand this human, this Eli Gray, but she knew she couldn't let him die here. Forgotten in the dirt, her legs screamed in pain as she pushed herself up. She limped to his side, gritted her teeth, and reached under his arms. "Stupid," she muttered. "You're too heavy." But she still pulled him up, dragged him inch by inch across the rocks, through ash and wires she didn't care about, the blood smearing her hands or the way her own wounds burned. She had to move him. In the distance, laser fire still echoed now and then, a reminder that the war hadn't stopped. But here, in this small patch of ruins, the night had gone quiet. Renari knew a place nearby, a cave under the old ruins, one she had found as a child before the war had reached this side of the planet. It took almost an hour, but she finally got him there. The entrance was hidden behind a fallen statue of a forgotten alien god, cracked and split in half. She pulled Eli inside and laid him down gently on a soft patch of dry moss. Then she collapsed beside him, breathing hard, every muscle trembling. After some time, she sat up again and took off a small pouch from her belt. Inside were old herbs, sharp-smelling roots, and scraps of cloth she had picked from fallen medics. She crushed the herbs, mixed them with water from her canteen, and pressed the paste against Eli's wound. He groaned, but didn't wake. She ripped a piece of her sleeve and tied it tightly around his shoulder. It wasn't perfect, but it would slow the bleeding. She sat beside him again, watching his chest rise and fall. Hours passed. The wind howled outside the cave, and Renari wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. Her eyes drifted to the human again. His face looked peaceful now, like he was just sleeping. Strange, she thought. How quiet he was, how calm. Most humans she had met were loud, angry, full of orders. But this one? He had said nothing cruel, nothing hateful. He had just acted. He saw her in danger and moved to protect her. Why? She didn't understand it. And yet, she felt something warm in her chest when she looked at him. As the night deepened, she finally lay down beside him, not too close, but close enough to hear his breath. In her dreams, she heard footsteps, metal boots against stone. She woke suddenly. Those weren't dreams. Someone was here. Renari stayed low, her ears sharp, her hand reaching for the small blade at her hip. A shadow moved near the entrance of the cave. She held her breath, heart pounding. A light flickered outside a search drone. She crawled silently over Eli and pressed herself against the cave wall, holding her blade tight. The drone floated past slowly, scanning. She didn't move, didn't breathe. After what felt like forever, it drifted away into the night. Renari waited a little longer before moving again. She returned to Eli's side, checked his wound, and sighed with relief. He was still breathing, still alive. She looked at the stars through the small crack in the cave ceiling, then back at the human beside her. "You really are trouble," she whispered. "But I'll keep you safe now." And for the first time in years, Renari felt something close to peace, even in the middle of a war. Even lying beside a wounded stranger from another world, she felt it because Eli had done what no one else had. He chose her life over his own, and now she would carry him forward, wherever that road led. Renari's ears twitched before her eyes even opened. There was a strange hum in the air, low and vibrating, like a distant engine echoing through stone. She opened her eyes slowly and saw a soft blue glow shining from the cracks of the cave wall. Eli was still beside her, breathing unevenly, his forehead damp with sweat. But now something else had changed. Something in the cave itself, the wall behind Eli, was glowing, showing faint shapes that hadn't been there before. Symbols ancient, ones written in her people's forgotten tongue. She stared in confusion, crawling closer, her fingers trembling. As they hovered over the markings, these ruins were supposed to be dead. Just old stone, lifeless and buried. But now, because of this human, they were waking up. She didn't touch anything, not yet. Instead, she whispered under her breath, "What? Are you?" Eli stirred slightly, groaning as he shifted, and his arm brushed against the glowing stone. In that instant, the cave pulsed with light, and the air grew warmer. A soft sound filled the space, almost like a heartbeat. Slow and steady, Renari froze, her skin tingling. Then she heard something else, outside. Far away voices, rough voices, in a language she didn't recognize at first. Then one word hit her like a blade target. She crawled to the mouth of the cave, peeking past the broken rocks. 4 shapes moved in the darkness, 2 with rifles, one scanning the ground, one giving orders. They were bounty hunters, not military, no colors, no flags, just paid killers, and they were tracking them. Renari's heart raced, her body still weak, but her instincts sharp. She had maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. She rushed back to Eli, shaking him gently. "Wake up, come on." He didn't respond. She grabbed his shirt and shook harder. "Eli, we have to move." His eyes fluttered open, barely, and he groaned. "Hurts. Can't." "You don't get to die now," she snapped, her voice shaking. "Not after what you did." He looked at her through half-lidded eyes, saw the fear there, the urgency, and tried to move. His body screamed in pain, but he gritted his teeth and nodded. Renari threw his arm around her shoulders and helped him to his feet. He stumbled, nearly fell, but she caught him, outside. One of the hunters fired a shot into the air. A signal. They didn't have time. Renari half-dragged, half-carried Eli through the glowing tunnel deeper into the cave. They moved quickly, shadows stretching behind them as more symbols lit their path. The deeper they went, the stranger the air felt. Like it was watching them, like the ruins were. Alive, Eli coughed, blood on his lips. "Where are we going?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but forward is better than dead." Behind them, footsteps echoed. Lasers hissed against stone. One beam hit the wall beside them, scorching it. Renari hissed in pain as sparks grazed her arm, but she didn't stop. She saw a door ahead, made of black metal with a spiral crest in the center. As she reached it, it didn't open. But when Eli's foot touched the stone in front of it, the door sighed open like it was breathing. Inside was a narrow chamber filled with a soft, golden mist. No sign of machines, no exit, just empty space. But they had no choice. She pulled Eli inside, and the door slid shut behind them with a deep thud. Silence, darkness, then light. A line of glowing shapes appeared around the room, floating midair. Surrounding them, Renari stared in awe as the symbols turned slowly, forming a circle. Eli looked at her, confused. "Is this your people's tech?" "No," she said softly. "It's older." One of the floating symbols hovered near Eli's chest and began to glow brighter. The wounds on his body pulsed, and he gasped as warmth spread through him. He dropped to his knees, breathing hard. But with a strange energy returning to his limbs, Renari stumbled back, shocked. "It's healing you," she whispered. "Why would it do that?" Eli stood slowly, color returning to his face. "Maybe it knows I'm not the enemy." A loud crash shook the outer wall. The hunters had found the main entrance. They didn't have much time. Renari looked at Eli, this human who bled for her, who had now awakened something even she couldn't understand. Whatever was happening, it wasn't chance. It was destiny, and someone out there wanted to bury it forever. Asterisk the chamber hummed like it had a heartbeat of its own, slow and powerful. Eli stood in the golden mist, swaying slightly as strength returned to his body. Renari watched in silence, her eyes wide, her breath caught halfway in her throat. The symbols floating in the air shimmered around him, spinning slowly as if they recognized him, as if they had been waiting. She had never seen anything like this. Not in her homeworld archives, not in the war records, not even in the ancient myths whispered by elders. This wasn't just old tech, this was sacred, the kind her people believed was long lost. Buried with the stars, and now it answered to a human. Eli touched one of the glowing symbols, and it responded by pulsing warmly. A soft voice filled the chamber, not from the walls, not from a speaker, but from inside their minds. "Code accepted," it said. Human-linked Renari stepped back, alarmed. "What does that mean?" Eli shook his head slowly. "I don't know." Then the voice spoke again. "Different now, deeper, older, blood of the broken one, bearer of the unburned path." "Welcome," Renari whispered. "This is a vault." She turned to him, her voice low and serious. Only the ancient protectors could open it. "My people lost the ability thousands of cycles ago, but I'm not one of your people," Eli said softly. "Why would it accept me?" She stared at him for a long time, as if seeing him for the first time before she could answer. The walls trembled. Another blast shook the chamber louder now. The bounty hunters had reached the outer vault door, and they were not leaving without. Blood, the symbols flickered, warning lights glowing across the room. "Defense mode, inactive," the voice said. "Core link required." Eli looked down at his hands, then at Renari. "If I'm the link, what do I do?" She stepped forward, taking his hand without hesitation. "You trust me?" He nodded, and together they moved toward the center of the chamber, where a small platform waited. As soon as they stepped on it, a beam of light surrounded them, and the chamber began to shift. Walls peeled back, gears moved behind stone. Something ancient waking up fully, and then, without warning, images flashed in the light, memories not their own. A war long before theirs. Humans and her kind standing side by side, united. A betrayal, a lie, a shadowy force tearing them apart. Time passed, memories broke into pieces, but the vault remained. Waiting for someone worthy to open the truth again, Renari clutched Eli's arm. "They lied to us. Both of our kinds, they made us enemies." Eli's voice was quiet, but full of fire. "And now they'll try to kill us for knowing another." Crash echoed above. The bounty hunters were breaching the inner seal. The vault voice spoke once more, louder now. Protection initiated. Partial shield. A barrier formed over the entrance as sparks rained down, delaying the hunters for a moment, but not for long. "We can't stay here," Renari said quickly. "There's another way out, through the old river tunnels below." "How do you know?" Eli asked. "Because the old stories say that protectors always had an escape path." She replied. "They were smart enough to plan for the worst." They hurried to the back wall, where the symbols parted and revealed a narrow stairwell of glowing stone. As they descended, Eli looked back one last time at the chamber. Still humming softly behind them, he didn't know what he had awakened, but it felt important. Like his whole life had been leading to that moment, and somehow, this alien girl Renari was part of that path below. The tunnel opened to a cold underground river, dark and fast. Renari stepped in without fear, the water rising to her waist. "Come on, before they catch up," Eli followed, teeth gritted. Against the cold, they moved through the current. Guided by the light from her small bracelet device, behind them, the vault door finally gave way, lasers cutting through stone. But the river took them before the hunters could reach the passage. They were gone, swallowed by the underground flow. For now, they were safe. but both of them knew it wouldn't last long. Someone up there wanted them dead, not because they were enemies, but because they had found the truth, and now the only way out was forward, together. The water had stolen their warmth, but not their will. Eli gasped as he pulled himself out of the underground river, clothes soaked, muscles aching. Renari followed, shivering, her thin arms wrapped around herself, her lips pale. They had emerged in a forgotten cavern deep beneath the surface, where the air was thick and the silence pressed like a weight. Around them were ancient stone walls, covered in vines that glowed softly in blue and green patterns. Renari collapsed. Beside Eli, coughing, shaking, but alive, he lay back, staring at the high ceiling where crystals pulsed faintly like stars. Neither of them spoke for a while, both breathing hard, both thinking the same thing. They had barely made it. "Are we safe?" Eli finally asked, his voice rough. Renari turned her head toward him. "For now," she whispered. "But they'll keep looking." Eli sat up, wincing from the bruises under his healing skin. The ancient tech had saved his life. But the pain was still there, deep in his bones. He looked at Renari, mud on her face, cuts on her skin, and yet her eyes were steady. Watching the dark like a soldier, he wanted to thank her, but no words came. Instead, he reached into his vest and pulled out a small silver tag, his ID, and offered it to her. She took it slowly, flipping it over in her hand. "Eli Gray," she read quietly, then looked at him. "You humans always carry your names on metal." He smiled faintly. "So if we die, someone remembers." She looked at it again, then closed her hand around it, holding it tightly. "You won't die," she said, voice firm. "Not while I'm with you." For a long moment, they just sat there, in the quiet glow of the cavern. But then something changed. Renari's bracelet started blinking a sharp rhythm, like a pulse. She checked it, and her eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Eli asked, standing slowly. "This cavern." "It's not empty," she said. "There's something ahead." They followed a narrow path deeper into the stone, moving slowly, weapons drawn. After 20 steps, the ground opened into a wide, circular chamber. In the center stood a strange structure like a throne, but wrapped in roots and wires. Above it floated a sphere, glowing dimly, spinning in place. It was humming, like it had been waiting. As they stepped closer, the sphere flared with sudden light, and Renari stumbled back, shielding her eyes. Eli stood still, eyes wide, because the sphere was showing him something, a vision. He saw a vast battlefield not of this world, where humans and Renari's people stood side by side. They were fighting against something massive, something with black tendrils and no face. And behind it, a figure cloaked in shadows, whispering lies into both sides, turning allies into enemies. Then the vision faded. Eli dropped to his knees, heart pounding. Renari rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "What did you see?" He looked up slowly. "They made us hate each other. Someone did this on purpose." Long ago, Renari stared at the sphere, then back at him, her voice barely a breath. They erased history before they could say more. The sphere spoke not in words, but in emotions, memories, a warm pulse of truth, of unity, of warning. And then one clear thought echoed in both their minds. "Protect the key." Eli looked at Renari, confused. "What key?" She didn't answer, because at that moment, the roots around the throne began to shift, pulling back to reveal something, a small orb, glowing softly, pulsing with energy that felt alive. Renari stepped forward and reached for it, but as her fingers touched it, a bolt of energy rushed through her chest. She gasped and fell. Eli caught her before she hit the ground, panic in his eyes. "Renari," he called, shaking her gently. She opened her eyes slowly, and for the first time they glowed blue. Not just glowing, they were lit from within. Like stars trapped in glass, I saw everything, she whispered, trembling. I saw who's behind this war. Eli leaned in. Who? Her lips parted, but before she could speak, her bracelet screamed with red light. A tracking signal, reactivated by the orb's energy. They had been found again. Footsteps echoed above. Metal boots marching across ancient stone. Eli stood, lifting Renari in his arms, no hesitation this time. Whatever secret they now carried, it was powerful. And someone didn't want it reaching the surface. The hunters were closing in, but Eli wasn't running away anymore. He was running toward something now. The old tunnel shook as boots thundered down the passage. Dust rained from above. And faint voices echoed like growls in the dark. Eli didn't wait. He lifted Renari in his arms, her body still weak, her eyes glowing faint blue, and ran. The orb pulsed in her hand, dimming with every step. As if it were hiding again, the moment he turned the corner, a shot blazed past his head, burning. The rock wall, go back. Someone shouted in a deep voice, but Eli didn't even glance. He dove behind a fallen stone slab, shielding Renari, who gripped his shoulder weakly. They're close, she whispered. Too close. I know, Eli said, scanning the area. Heart pounding like a war drum. He had no fancy weapons left, just one low-battery blaster, a damaged knife, and the sheer will to not die today. Another laser shot tore through the air. And he knew they were surrounding the cavern, but the ancient walls around them began to hum again, the way they had in the vault. Renari looked up, dazed but alert. There. Responding to your fear, she said softly, or maybe to your purpose. Eli glanced around the symbols on the wall, flickered as if watching him. He stood up slowly, one arm holding Renari close, the other gripping his blaster. I'm not letting them take you, he said firmly. Not after all this. He stepped into the open, gun raised. 3 bounty hunters appeared at once, 2 aimed. The third stepped forward, armored and confident. But the air changed. The symbols flared bright, and a pulse of invisible energy burst from Eli's feet, rippling outward like a shockwave. The first hunter dropped his weapon, screaming as blue fire crawled up his arms. The second was thrown back against the wall. Unconscious in seconds, the third hesitated, then aimed, but Eli was already moving. He sprinted forward, ducked under the laser shot, and slammed into him. With full force, the impact cracked armor, and the hunter crumpled to the ground. Groaning, Eli stood over him, chest heaving, glowing lines flickering under the skin of his arms. He didn't notice them until Renari called out, "Your body? It's changing." He looked down and saw faint blue light under his skin. In his veins, like the vault had left something inside him. "It chose you," Renari whispered, pulling herself up to lean against the stone. "You're a carrier now." "Of what?" Eli asked, breathing hard. "Hope," she said simply, "or destruction." The orb in her hand blinked again, and then it spoke not in voice, but through feeling. Through thought, a map appeared in the air, made of light, showing a path to a tower beyond the ruins. There, a signal could be sent. A message to the world, to all species, revealing the hidden truth of the war. But the path was blocked by enemy forces, satellites, and the final hunter faction. Eli looked at Renari. "Ken, you walk." She nodded slowly. "If you lead," he helped her up. And they moved through the glowing tunnel, deeper into the old ruins. Above, the sky was starting to lighten, the first sign of morning, but it didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a countdown. Their footsteps echoed in the hollow chambers as they followed the path shown by the orb. Renari leaned on him, her strength fading, but her spirit sharp. "You're not the man who fell into that cave bleeding," she said quietly. "You've changed, so have you." Eli replied, "You were supposed to hate me." "I did." She smiled weakly. But then you took the pain for me. Ahead. They saw the exit-wide crack in the mountain wall that opened toward the valley and the tall communication tower glowing in the far distance. But as they stepped into the open air, ships roared overhead, and a dozen figures dropped from the sky, landing in front of them with mechanical thuds. Dark armor, red visors, rifles charged, the final hunter squad had arrived. Their leader stepped forward, towering, voice like stone. Surrender the girl and the orb. Eli stepped between Renari and the squad, his hands glowing faintly, his body marked with the vault's energy. No, he said simply. The sky cracked with lightning above. Though no clouds were there, the earth beneath his feet hummed again, and Renari, barely able to stand, whispered behind him. They have no idea what they're facing. Eli raised his weapon. The orb floated beside him, and without fear, without orders, without a plan, he charged. Time slowed the moment Eli's feet left the ground. The air pulsed around him, each heartbeat echoing like thunder inside his chest. The armored hunters raised their weapons, but before a single shot could fire, the orb beside Eli blazed with white light. A wave of energy exploded outward, bending the earth and sky. The hunters were lifted off their feet, slammed backward like dolls in a storm. Renari shielded her eyes, watching through trembling fingers as the human she once thought weak now stood like a storm made flesh. Eli didn't understand how he was doing it, but something ancient and powerful had taken root inside him. Not a weapon, not magic, something older than both, something alive. His feet touched the ground again. Gently, like landing on air, he turned toward Renari, eyes glowing faintly, and reached out a hand. She took it, no hesitation. Together, they walked past the fallen hunters, toward the tall tower glowing at the edge of the valley. It stood like a silent witness to everything, tall, cracked, but still working, still waiting. The closer they got, the more the orb pulsed, guiding them, almost singing with light inside. The tower, old machines flickered to life the moment Eli stepped near. Screens lit up, cables moved like vines, and a console opened, revealing a communication beacon. Renari limped forward, placing her palm on the panel, but nothing happened. "It needs both of us," she said softly, looking at Eli. He placed his hand beside hers, and the machine glowed. Bright blue, the beacon rose slowly from the floor and began to spin. A sound filled the room, not just a voice, but a song, ancient and full of memory. Images flooded the air, showing the galaxy the truth, how their two races once stood side by side, how a shadow force divided them, how peace was broken not by nature, but by lies. And then, a final message pulsed through the stars. The truth returns, far above. In orbit, satellites picked up the signal, relaying it across systems. Across worlds, soldiers, leaders, civilians, all of them saw, all of them heard. The war paused, not from orders, but from disbelief. Renari turned to Eli, tears in her glowing eyes. "You did it." He shook his head. "We did." But before they could celebrate, a sharp sound echoed behind them. The lead hunter had survived. Armor broken, bleeding, rifle trembling in his hands, he aimed it at Renari, fury burning in his eyes. Eli moved instantly, stepping in front of her. Again, another blast fired, another choice made, but this time, the beam stopped mid-air, frozen, like ice, then shattered into blue dust. The hunter collapsed, eyes wide in terror. Not of death, but of the human who would not break. Silence returned. Renari leaned against Eli, breathing hard, her body weak, but her heart full. The beacon above them still sang, sending out waves of hope. And far away, 100 ships turned. From battle, 1,000 leaders paused, and 1,000,000 people watched the message with open eyes. Eli sat down slowly, pulling Renari close. Both of them exhausted but smiling, She rested her head against his shoulder, her voice a whisper. You risked your life for me, even when I didn't deserve it. He looked at her, gentle and true. You gave me a reason. They didn't need more words after that. The tower stood tall behind them. The wind soft against their faces, and somewhere in the distant sky, the first true peace in generations had already begun, because a human took the blast meant for an alien girl, and what followed was worth everything.